Hey,
What's
how
up?
are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Thank
Oh
you so much for agreeing to do this.
my God, it's such a pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just to give you a bit of background, I play for Carnival Cruise Lines. I play drums, and
Nice.
so I've been off this whole year due to this like crazy pandemic.
Totally.
A few years ago, I wanted to start like a series where I spoke with musicians like yourself, very elite musicians, about their lives and things like that. I found that when I was like reading magazines or watching interviews,
Yeah.
90% of it directed towards like the gear you use or like what guitar you played on this tour, whereas it's like I don't really care about those things. Like I'd rather know
Yeah.
how you guys got there and how you
Totally.
maintain being a pro musician for that long with the biggest artists on the world. So that's why I started it. And then I started the podcast series this year. And people have been very kind, like yourself. They've given me like an hour or two of their time. So yeah, so
Awesome.
thank you so much.
Oh, cool. Of course. No
Yeah.
problem.
So why don't we dive straight in? I would love to know. You've played, obviously, you're playing with Katy Perry, and you have done for a number of years. I would love to know how you got there and the journey that it took you.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it probably was a longer journey than than just getting the gig. But so basically, like I started playing guitar when I was 13 years old. Joined this community organization called Musicians Workshop where they put kids together and taught us how to play in a band, basically. So that's kind of how I started in music, right? And my dad's also a guitar player, so I would pick up things from him as well. And then I just decided I wanted to go to school for it. And I think that was probably like the one like thing that probably catapulted me most into music and like learning how to be a musician out in the real world, you know?
Yeah.
So I went to USC and studied popular music there, guitar performance. And and then after that, I just spent like years gigging around LA, like just hustling, just playing any gig I could, like the shitty ones, the good ones, whatever. Um, and it was kind of brutal, but kind of amazing at the same time. So yeah, I graduated in 2014 and then just gigged around LA and and then like I had a couple pro gigs that came to me. So like the first pro gig I ever did was that I was subbing for somebody for CeeLo Green.
Wow.
Um, so the guitar player couldn't do it, and I had met the music director, and he asked me to do it, and it was like my first time playing a pro gig, and I was like, oh my God, this is so terrifying, right? They like sent me this crazy set with all these like medleys, and I had to learn it like in a, I don't know, a short amount of time, and then just fly out to Dubai and do this show. And I was like, I never traveled internationally. It was just like all new, and it was like thrown into the fire, and like yeah, I think that that was like probably the one thing that like helped me grow a lot in regards to playing like a pro gig because that was the first time I'd done it, right? And then after that, I'm trying to think like what was the path? Um, I ended up getting a gig playing for Zayn Malik for a while.
Wow.
That was in 2016. He started doing a solo project, and I auditioned for that band. That was kind of a random call where it was just like some people. I think it was Barry Squire put on. He was like a popular like puts auditions together, a guy in LA, and I think he like posted it on Facebook like calling auditions for this artist, and I think somebody like threw my name in there or whatnot. So I got called to that audition, and then got that gig and we had like rehearsed and played a few shows and I think that lasted like a few months and then that gig ended. So that was just like he no longer like was performing. So like
Yeah,
none
yeah,
of
yeah.
us none of us were working. So then it was like another like year of me just like playing other random gigs being like is this really what I want to do with my life? Like I don't know, because it's
Yeah.
so disheartening. But like fun at the same time, but you see your other friends moving up in life being like, having like a better apartment and stuff and you're like okay I'm still in like a very bad area.
Yeah.
And then eventually it was so random. I got a message on Facebook. A friend of a friend reached out to me asking if I wanted to audition for Katy Perry, saying he was assisting for the music director. He was like his assistant or something. And I was like, wait, what? Like I kind of didn't believe it. I was like, okay, this is hilarious, right? Yeah, let me just say yes. And then I went to this audition, and I don't think I've ever been more nervous in my life. Like it was absolutely just like, what am I doing here? But But I honestly felt like I played great. Like it felt good. Like, you know, it was just because everybody, when I walked into the audition room, everyone was so nice. I was like, oh my gosh, this band vibe is people
Yeah.
were just like genuinely welcoming. And that's like, you know, you don't find that in every band. Um, and so I went to that audition and then I went to a callback where she was there too. So then I auditioned in front of her and then that's basically how I got the gig. Like it's so random because it's like the guy who referred me to this music director was somebody who remembered me from USC. Which is like we didn't have a big connection by any means, you know what I mean? It was just so random and it was just I felt like it was like the universe was like, okay, you're ready for this now. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
Because like those things are just like how do you put that into action? Like that's just like out of your hands, you know?
You
I
must
think
have
it's
manifested that for a long time.
I guess it's just like you put in the work, you're like running around town, you know, learning on all these gigs, and then eventually the universe is like, you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, go do this.
Yeah. It just picks a
Yeah.
time and then just gives it to you when it's right.
Yeah, totally.
It's so weird, which is like,
So weird.
it's that's such difficult advice for people who want to do the job because it's like, well, you'll just do it when you're ready to do it, you know? But you
Yeah.
can also
No,
like,
I know.
yeah, but there
But
are
I do
also things that you can do in the meantime. Like
oh no, of
you worked your
course.
ass off, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like I gigged so much around LA and I definitely say like I learned like on all those things. And like I learned on the previous gigs, like the Zayn gig I did, you know? Like there was something big I learned there was just like I had no clue about the whole amp modeling world when I joined that gig. You know, I was just used to playing amps with and pedal boards. And on that gig, everybody eventually switched to using fractal axe effects gear. And we got these little like fractal pedal boards and then like the guitar tech taught us how to use that and everything. And then that eventually I took to the Katy Perry gig, which was perfect because I mean to the Katy Perry audition, which was perfect because that was the exact gear they used, you know? So it was something like, you know, like these little things, these building blocks along the
It's
journey.
so wild. I was so lucky to have Lana Del Rey's drummer on the podcast, Tom Marsh.
Mm,
And just such a similar thing happened with him where when he was in his like teenage years or 20s, he went to Jerusalem just to like
mhm.
work in a bar and he
Oh my
bumped
God.
into a guy who like opened his eyes up. He would had like all these CDs and electronic cassettes and things like that. And he gave them all to Tom Marsh. And then he really started getting into electronic music. And then something like
Yeah.
10 years later, when Lana Del Rey's people asked him to go and do it,
Oh
there
my
were
God.
like things from that guy. Like,
That's so
isn't that
brilliant.
so weird?
It's so great. It's
I
all the
know.
things we gather on the journey.
Yeah, and that's such an amazing like the unit. Like the one thing, like I don't know if you've read The Secret, have you?
You know, I never read it, but I saw it was like a documentary as well,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah.
like the kind of ethos is like the same as just what you were saying. It's like, manifest it and then it'll come to you, act like it's yours, and it'll come, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so the only thing that I didn't really like, which I liked what you said, is that it was the narrative she kind of said of like, well, I was poor, so I wanted money, so I manifested a check in the mail. And it's like, well, you also wrote like a best-selling book, it's like,
Totally.
don't take away the fact that you have to really work
You do
and then
think
it comes.
exactly. No,
So
it's
yeah, so you've obviously done two of the biggest auditions like for any musician, especially on that was Zayn. I'm guessing it was the Pillow Talk album. It was that
yes,
album,
it
right?
was.
Which
Yeah.
was like such a great record.
It was so good, right?
So
Yes.
what did you have to do in these auditions?
That's a great question. So I think in the Zayn audition, they had the band there. So I was playing with the band that was currently there, and they were just trying to add a second guitar player. And I think they sent me two songs. I think it was probably, I can't even remember the songs to be totally honest, but they sent me two songs and just had me play them. Um, I think that's all it was. Like, I don't remember there being anything else in that particular one. And then the Katy Perry audition, there was no band playing. They were just there watching, and they had me play to a backing track. And they sent me two songs as well. That was Chained to the Rhythm and E.T. And like they sent me like the song and the guitar stem up, and they were like, just try to recreate the tones as much as possible for this audition
Right.
and play these parts basically. And then they were like, play a solo in this section. So they told me beforehand what I needed to do, you
Okay.
know? And then so then I got there and I just played those two songs and took a solo on ET and it was like honestly really easy now that I think about it. I was like, wow, that was so easy. And then after that, I think they asked me to like, they were just like, yeah, just like play something you feel like is you, just like jam along. And I'm
Oh,
like, that to me, I was like, okay. um, I don't even know what I did. I might have like like did a little loop pedal and like jammed along to some progression I made up right there. I honestly don't even remember. So that was that audition. And then at the callback, where Katy was there, it was me and a drummer were auditioning together, and so I think we also played two songs. I'm not sure if those were they were the same two songs. And then after that, she asked us to, I think she asked us to like jam a little bit, just like jam. And then she asked me to sing. So then I was like, okay, I just like sang a song that I was like, used to singing. It was honestly all just like super like random. And I was like, okay, I don't know. I was like so nervous. So
so how did you deal with those nerves? That's like going from like probably the local circuit to like, some of the biggest pop stars in the
yeah,
world. Like, how do you come over that?
that's a great question. Oh man, that's such a good question. I feel like I mean that they were there while I was playing. Obviously, like the nerves were like hardcore there. But for some reason, if I feel like if I'm playing within the style that I'm good at, which tends to be like pop rock music, or if I get to take a solo, like I feel like I could still play well. You know what I mean? I could
Yeah.
still do my thing. I feel like if I was asked to play like a jazz song while I'm nervous, like I would just botch it. You know what I mean? Because I'd
Yeah.
be all in my head. But I feel like within pop music, you get to like feel within your body, and like that is to me like super helpful with overcoming nerves. It's like get into your body, like move your like when you're auditioning, like make sure you stand, like move like if you can like dance to the groove. I feel like I know that sounds like so ridiculous, but I feel like you can overcome nerves just by moving your body and getting into the music, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
and that performance element was that like I can imagine if you're with a band, it's not so bad. So with the Zayn one, you're with everyone else, so you can vibe off
yeah,
everyone else. But I've done
totally.
auditions before where it's just you, and then to like
Yeah.
vibe on your own to a CD looks so awkward, you know?
Totally, totally. I know. It's so true.
So what did you
But
what
you
did
got
you
to do
do?
it.
You just get into it.
Honestly, just get into. I mean, so much of what I like love about music and performing is that you get to like have fun and dance along to the music, you know? Like I don't like to just stand there. And honestly, if I just stand there, it feels very odd. So I like to just move around, and I mean, it wasn't like moving like walking around the stage like being total rock star, you know? It was just like having fun grooving.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think yeah, that's great for anyone who wants to know. I've been to a few auditions which are way worse, where you are like you're in the room whilst the other people in your position are auditioning,
Yes. Oh
and
my
that's like
gosh.
awful.
That sounds awful. Why would they do that?
Yeah, because then this sheep and herd mentality comes in where you think, well, like I wouldn't play it like I'm not going to play it like that. But then if
Yeah.
three people before you have played it like that, you're kind of like, well, do I or don't I? And then it takes like a strong
Yeah.
character to be like, I'm just going to still play how I play, you know?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That would be so brutal.
Yeah, I know. I was speaking to the last one I did was with a drum teacher at Berkeley in
Hmm.
Boston, and he was saying similar things happen, and we were talking about an audition where people, like I said, where people will go up and then people will follow that. But all it takes is one person say, do you know what? I'm going to just play how I play. And he was
Yeah.
talking about a Latin guy, I think, a Brazilian Latin guy who was auditioning for some Afro-Cuban gig in Brazil, like a massive time gig. And all of these timbale players came in and were going wild and blah, 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 blah. And then this guy came in, and instead of following like the four people that went before him, he literally
Yeah.
just played where he should have played. So he only played
Yeah.
like he said something like, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like he played like 20 notes, but he got the job,
Nice. That's
so it's like
awesome.
that's like a testament to like musical integrity, right?
Totally. It's so
And
good.
is it the same with these big gigs, is that you play like very much in line with what's going on, like it's not really about us, is it?
No, I mean 100%, especially with with the Katy Perry and the Zayn gig. It was all about just you play the parts they want you to play. Um, And I think there's something fun and rewarding about that. It's like, you know, you're trying to recreate this tone like as much as possible. You're trying to play this part as exact as possible. And I think as musicians, like, you know, we want to be emotional and creative and expressive. And I think sometimes that can feel like stifling, but at the end of the day, it's just how you look at it. And like I found such like satisfaction, I guess, in trying to just do my best at the job, you know, and you can find your creative times elsewhere, you know.
Yeah.
And I also got to take solos on these gigs, which was like, okay, here's my creative time. This is
Yeah.
awesome. And like, so
Yeah.
that's
And so
super fun.
did you play exactly the same every night on the shows?
You know, at first I had one solo basically in the beginning of the tour on Kiss a Girl, and I was like, yeah, I think I pretty much played the same solo every night. I had like written something out, and then eventually halfway through the tour, like somebody in the band was like, Devon, just like spice it up, just start like improving more. Like you're an improv kind of girl, and I was like, yeah, this is true. Like I used to improv like way more, but I feel like if you're in arenas like that, you feel like the stakes are higher, so it's scarier to improv, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, but then eventually I just kind of had a little bit more fun with it and let it be more spontaneous.
Yeah, isn't it wild though that you said like you were saying that you like all of your experience, no matter how small or insignificant. So you might have
Yeah,
just been like noodling all the time whenever you would improvise, and then how you see that grow into like your next role.
totally. That's so true. Oh my
It's
God.
like so wild, right? That like
Yeah,
we are like an accumulation of our experience, but if you don't have it, you won't
yeah,
have it like further down the line. So all of these like things that might seem like mundane or or gigs that you're like, yeah, it's a gig, and it was great. But then you'll take something from that one gig, like,
mm-hmm.
like you were saying earlier on about the
Exactly.
footboards. It's like so
Yeah,
mad, isn't it?
it's crazy. Yeah. It's kind of awesome though when you think about it. It's like it puts all those past experiences into perspective and gives them more value.
Yeah. Well, plus it also gives you some like comfort in knowing that even if at the time you're going through some like shitty times or the
Yeah.
gig is quite difficult or this or that, you're learning things in that gig that are gonna suit you down the road anyway.
Yes. Yes. And I feel like that also makes me think about like pandemic times where we're all like primarily at home, you know, like, okay, so how is this going to affect my future? You know, like you get into your head thinking like, am I going nowhere? But it's like in reality, I've had a lot of time to like work on other things musically to help me still grow and whatnot. So
Yeah. And so
that's how it
are
is.
you quite like all musicians I feel are our own worst critics. No one's going to tell
Yeah.
us things we don't already know about ourselves, which
Yeah.
is like
So
the nice
true.
thing about an audition. If someone says like, "Oh, your timing's a bit off or this or that," you're already having those conversations anyway. So
Completely.
are
Yeah.
you the same?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, definitely my own worst critic. Come on.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how do you combat that?
God. That is that is That's a toughie. You know, it's so funny. I feel like sometimes I walk off gigs. It's like I clearly know like I might have made a mistake here, and whatnot, and I just am able to let it go and be like, you know what, that was the moment. Like that was totally fine. Like I killed most of it. I feel so good about that, you know. And then
Yeah.
sometimes I'll walk off gigs just completely beating myself up, and without the perspective of like you really did a great job, you know. But I think it all just comes down to where you're at mentally. It's
Right.
not necessarily how you play, it's just like where are you at mentally and how are you really like looking at this. And I have to do a lot of like prayer and meditation, to be honest, to like get myself out of those dark places when they do come,
Yeah.
because of course I beat myself up. I mean, I have such high standards for myself and like for life in general. You know, of course I want it to be perfect, but the reality is we're human and it's not always going to be perfect. So it's
Yeah.
hard to face sometimes.
Yeah, which is such a lovely, I think for anyone that's going to listen, that's such and me personally as well, because like you said, because you want to do a good job. So naturally then you
Yeah.
raise your own standard and then you're
Yeah.
constantly trying to hit that standard. But to hear that,
Totally.
like someone who plays for, like you're an elite level musician playing
Yeah.
for, great, huge time people, it's almost like it takes you back sometimes because I've heard a few other people, um, like say that they're playing with these massive artists and they're
Yeah.
still like you know I have imposter syndrome sometimes or when they first get the gig.
Completely. Completely. I feel like that exists within most musicians I know, especially that are on like high level gigs, because you're just like, you're always like slightly like afraid that you could lose it. You know, you're like, because the reality is, and you know, anybody, you could get replaced at
Right.
any moment, really. Um, but I think that imposter syndrome does come from being like such like a perfectionist too. You know, it's like you want to be the best, you want to be the best. And sometimes you don't give yourself enough credit for the magic that you do have. And like, obviously you got hired for that gig because of your particular magic. So like, take ownership of it, you know?
Yeah. And also like try not to just think about what everyone else is doing. Because if you know, there's a guy, there's a clinician in Europe called Benny Greb. He's a drummer. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's like really big time over here. And he wrote a book recently all about like efficient practice and stuff. But one of the things he covered was like this new age of like a wealth of material. Like when like the people who we look up to were younger, you know, they only had maybe like 3 or 4 books to learn out of, you know, so they could just hammer those books and then get on with it. And there wasn't social media to constantly be comparing themselves to anyone else. Whereas now we have like unlimited resources, unlimited. So what would you say about how to navigate through this now world of like, you know, because you can never be like, you look at the, like, I'll speak about drummers because I know drummers better than anyone else, but like, you know, you might look at, say, Jeff Porcaro, who played on Rosanna, and you think, right, shuffle, like he was amazing at shuffles, and then this and this. And then if you tried to be all three, you would like, you'd never be able to do it because they were like experts in that field, you know? Yeah. So what would you say to people who are finding that difficult?
Well, yeah, I mean, like what you said about Instagram, like where you're constantly like looking at these other players who are doing different things and you who are maybe in like a similar level or playing field, and comparing yourself. That's kind of what I'm like relating to at this moment. I mean, I feel like that's such a real struggle and we all do that. It's like, what do you say to that though? I mean, I think he's just like, follow your joy. Because you're going to get really good at what you love, you know, like what you truly love. Like I could probably try. I don't love jazz. Let's just be honest. I don't play jazz, but I could try to practice it all day and maybe get to a certain point, and it's never going to come out like incredible, you know? So I think if you just focus on listening to the music that makes you stoked, listen to the players that makes you stoked, and sit in your room and play along to those things or create music like that. And I don't know, I think it's all about just finding your own voice, you know what I mean? Because I think if I tried to be like other players I see out there that I think are obviously incredible, but they're nothing like me, I would never be able to do that, like you said. Right. So it's like, okay, I might as well just continue to find my voice, which is honestly where I feel like you find the most joy and satisfaction. Like if I'm in my room, like creating something, creating a track, and then like playing melody along to it or whatever, that feels so me. It's like, wow, this just feels so authentic and magical. And why else would I want to be somebody else? You know, like this is rap. This is,
and that's what will set you apart, right? Because because there are so many passing trends. Like I'm sure there are in guitar where there are like certain like fills or licks or whatever that like people are doing. But then by the time you've learned something that you think you're only doing it because you want that like instant gratification, or you want, you know, you think it's going to get you a certain place. The minute you go there, it's going to be something else. And then you'll just like, you'll be going so far away. You'll be straying the path so far from like what you actually want to do.
Totally.
It's pointless.
Oh man. So true.
You know?
Yeah. Oh my God.
So how do you prepare for these tours? That's what I would love to know. In Carnival, we learn about 250 songs per contract.
And 250.
So, wow. Yeah. And
Come on. Obviously that is badass.
So the reading has to be like a bit, you know, we have to be big readers and stuff. And I'm guessing you're a reader because you learn like more traditionally. Like, so what do you get charts, or do you get stems, or do you write your own charts? How does tour prep work?
Okay, so yes, I did go to school for music and we did have sight reading, but it was not the main focus by any means. So my sight reading skills are minimum. Like I could get through some things, but they're not fantastic by any means. So let me just say that has actually been completely fine in any pop gig that I've been on. Nobody's ever sent me a chart I need to read. I mean, outside of chord charts, which of course are that I'm totally fine with. But yeah, if you were to give me some like classical sheet music, I'm like, you have to read the melody. Like that might take me a second. But yeah, on the Katy Perry gigs and Zayn, like they usually just send me stems. They're like, okay, here's the guitar, this song, and then they'll send the particular guitar stems or keyboard stems if we need to like create the keyboard part on guitar, which honestly happens quite a bit. And and then we'll get to rehearsal, and there's usually me and another guitar player, and we'll just kind of decide who wants to take which part, or the music director will tell us which part. And then it's funny because at rehearsal we'll tend to spend, if we have new songs we're working on, we tend to spend at least an hour or two in the beginning of rehearsal. Everybody's in their own world with headphones on, like creating their tones. This is like part of rehearsal. We're like, okay, sound design time, everybody's sound designing. And then at the end of sound design time, we get on our talkback mics and tell our playback guy what our patch numbers are, and then he puts them into the playback rig so that we don't have any pedals on the ground or whatnot. So all the changes sound wise are happening within the playback rig along with the track. So that's super rad and freeing. And then once we do that, then usually the music director like will come in and we'll all like get together and okay, let's play the song. And sometimes we'll talk down the song before we even do that, and he'll tell us, okay, like make this part this way, even before we do the sound designing. And then yeah, we end up playing the song, and then he comes up with other ideas, and he's like, try this, and then we like edit. So it's like a process, it's just like, okay, let's try this, and then eventually we get to a place where like, this sounds rad, and eventually she'll come into rehearsal. You never know like when, it might be that day, it might be like weeks away, just whenever she's ready to come into rehearsal, and then she'll listen to it and give advice as well, like, okay, change this sound, or I want this arrangement to be different. So then sometimes we'll like have to go back and the music director will create a new arrangement for that song, and then we'll learn that. It's just all
Yeah.
It's just like a process. And like for the Katy Perry, I only have done one full tour, which was the Katy Perry Witness tour.
Yeah.
And for that tour, we had quite a bit of rehearsal for that. I want to say maybe like a full month of rehearsal in LA music wise for that, maybe even longer than a month. And then we went to Pennsylvania, into this place called Lidditz that has like this big rehearsal space, basically where a bunch of, I guess, tours rehearse, where they can like put up the whole stage and rig it the way they want. And we rehearsed out there for, I want to say like 2 weeks, and then we went back out there for another 2 weeks. So it was wild. There was a lot of rehearsing. It was first rehearsing all the music, and then it was getting together with the full production, the dancers and everything, and doing that kind of rehearsal. So it was rad. It was like such a cool experience to see how much effort can go into such a big production, and I hear from a lot of different musicians that the rehearsal experiences are so different, like I have some friends in Nashville who play for country artists where they're like, yeah, we rehearse for like a few days to a week before the tour.
Yeah.
And like there's no like organization, like it's just not as intense, it's not like you play this part now, you make this sound, make it sound exactly like this. It's just like play whatever you want and like go rock out. But I'm kind of like OCD, and I love making things as perfect as possible. So I get so like excited about working on a gig like Katy Perry, where everything, all the details are really thought out. Every single detail is thought out,
Yeah. I mean, it's also cool that she has direct input.
Oh, absolutely. She's so into it. Yeah.
Because I know there's probably a lot of gigs where the artist they will probably only speak to the MD, who will speak to you guys.
Yeah. That makes sense.
It's really cool to hear that, these big time artists have that direct input.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And what's it like? Does it ever like? I can imagine, because it's like one of my life goals is to be like to do what you do. So after the ships, I want to like tour and do things like that.
Heck yeah.
Does it get like really surreal sometimes? Like, does it ever like hit you and you're like,
yeah,
like I am playing, because you will see it from like the crowd will see you guys, and then you are like just standing behind like Katy Perry. Do you ever stop and think like, this is like wild?
Oh, honestly, like almost every night. Yes. Yes. Like she's also like, she's somebody who I've completely admired like throughout, since I was younger. I think I saw her Part of Me documentary in like theaters, I was like, she is so cool. So I totally admire her. And I think that she's such a fierce, incredible artist. So to be like, I think that's what's so humbling and beautiful about the gig, is like, I truly, truly like love who she is as an artist, and to be able to play for somebody like that you feel that way about is insane. You're just like, whoa, what is this, you know? And of
Yeah.
course, looking out at the audience and feeling that energy, like her fans are nuts, you know, they love
Yeah.
her. It's so fun. And I think like almost every night there's an acoustic part of the set where she's flying in the air and it's really intimate, and then she brings people up on stage, and like those moments, and oh, and there's lights going on in the audience, people are flashing their cell phones, and those moments I usually get like chills. I'm like, where am I right now? This is incredible. Like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine. I can only imagine because
Yeah.
obviously I've seen it from like behind where, it's like our musician's view is so much different to everyone else's in the world,
Totally.
So I can only imagine what it's like to play with like Zayn Malik
Yeah.
and Katy Perry. And I'm sure I can already tell that it'll be like, you'll do this for as long as you want. And then I'm sure there'll be many, many more big artists that you will go on to
That's so
play with.
sweet. That's so sweet. That's what we
So
pray for, right? We hope for
yeah,
that.
well, just
No,
manifest it, get a vision board, and then
right?
yeah,
It's so fun. Yeah. I think the dream is just like, for me, it's like playing for artists that you really love their music, because that changes things. Because I've played in bands or with artists where it's like my connection to the music was just not there. And like that's where the struggle really is. That's where you end up feeling like you're not in your purpose, I feel like, you know?
yeah. Because I think authenticity, like you can smell inauthenticity, and
Mm,
you can see it from a mile off. You see
totally.
bands all the time, locally or whatever, that you just think like none of you want to be here.
Oh
you're
my God,
doing you're
that's so
doing it for a
true.
paycheck.
Yes,
So it's
exactly.
great that you've played and are playing with someone that you truly believe in their music and stuff, because
Yeah.
I'm sure it would be difficult to play songs you just don't like every
No, it's
night,
yeah,
you know?
exactly. Oh my God, yes. I totally agree. I'm like, the moment, okay, the other chilling moment every night is playing Teenage Dream. Because to me, that is like the best pop song ever written. And so like every time I play that, I'm like, this is the best pop song ever written. Like, this is insane.
Yeah, she has so many hits, so
I know.
I'm sure it's like, well, and also they're like proper shows, aren't they?
Oh, for sure. They're
You
full
know?
productions, props, like wild, yeah, wild, very big props, things hanging from the ceiling, dancers like doing their thing. It's
Yeah.
super fun.
And so, like the length of tour, how long are your tours usually?
So that's a great question. That particular tour was a world tour and it lasted exactly a year. And apparently her tour before that, Prismatic tour, was a lot longer. I don't know exactly how long that one was. Maybe 2 or over 2 years. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe all tours are different, but the full year tour. I mean, that was a great introduction touring for me. I was like, all right, I'm all in for this year. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's see the world.
And so, our contracts are usually 7 months, or depending on the contract, it could be 11 months.
Okay.
There's like a mid contract, not like a lull, but there's a mid contract where you're like,
Ooh,
this is like, this is, we've been going at this a long time. And then when you're on the home
totally.
stretch, you get like a whole new lease of life because
Oh my
you're.
gosh, that's so what it
So
is.
what do you do in that time?
In the mid zone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. Oh man, I think it was like, where were we when it was like the middle of it? I don't even know. I feel like there was a point where we were in Asia where everyone was starting to get drained.
Yeah.
That might have been a little past the middle of it, but we were all getting exhausted, especially because like the flights were just like, I think they were earlier, and it was just a little bit more brutal. Some of the places, maybe were just a little bit more difficult. Like the airlines just felt, I don't know, just not as nice maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm trying to think like, how do you get through that? It's just like, oh man, I at the end of the day, it was all so much fun that I just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I don't think I could have complained about those moments,
Yeah.
just like go out, eat amazing food wherever you're at, just have
Yeah.
experiences. Like you're still going to be able to have fun even in that mid slump.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you also remember like that you are being paid to do something absolutely
I know.
extraordinary, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like remembering those things is true. Because yeah, there are moments where you're like playing a show and you're like, you find that you're getting tired, or you're like, why am I like not in this right now? It's like, remember where you're at. Sometimes you
Yeah.
have to tap back in because it does become routine.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do need to remember that.
Yeah. I spoke to a drummer before and I asked him the same question. He played on Broadway. And I was
Mm,
like, for them, like, you know, you will play a different venue every night. So that's like, you know, that's more stimulating.
That's true.
And I play to different guests every week. So that's massively stimulating as well.
Hmm.
Whereas for those guys, they play the same show twice a night, every night, the same show, you know? So I was like, you know, you've been on a show for a year. How do you cope with that? And his was really lovely. He was saying he just picks out someone in the crowd, and like someone in the theater audience who's like loving the show, and he just focuses on them for the whole time.
Oh, that's so good.
Isn't that so sweet?
Wow. I love that.
I think now that the guy who plays with Dear Evan Hansen, I think.
For who, sorry?
For Dear Evan Hansen. Do you know that show?
Oh, gotcha. Huh.
Yeah. But I thought that was such a lovely way to do it.
That's incredible. Honestly, I feel like now that I've heard that, I feel like I've had moments too where like there's specific spots of people you're like, you definitely connect with in the audience, and that does bring life to it for sure.
Yeah. And playing for Katy Perry and obviously Zayn, do you find, this is something I really wanted to ask you, do you find that it's like you have to be you have to act a certain way even sometimes when you're not on stage and things like that? Like I'm sure you probably had fans messaging you and things like that, because you're almost like a representative of her whether you're on or off stage, you know? Like if you went and got in like a bar fight, it probably wouldn't be your name, you know, LA guitarist gets in bar fight. It would probably be like Katy Perry's guitarist, you know?
Good point.
Do you find like that is a thing?
It might be a thing. I think it very much might be a thing. I don't tend to get into too much trouble, to be honest. I'm not quite the wildest one, so like I can't say for sure. It probably is a thing. I definitely feel a little bit of like an obligation, at least when I'm out there in the world. Like if fans come by and like they recognize us from being on tour or whatnot, like show them love, you know, talk to them and do what you would do if you were the artist, you know. And I think that's powerful because you're representing her by being as welcoming as she would be, because she, you know, she's so good to her fans. So I try to make sure I do that, is just like connect with the fans as much as possible if they want to connect with us. And like you do find people that are her fans that become like your diehard fans too, which is so cool. Like I had a couple of them, you know, and that's one amazing girl who's an incredible artist. She drew a portrait of me, and it was just like, this is so cool, you know. And like I would just do anything to like connect with her. And yeah, I think those moments are rad. And I also think there's something that one of the band members kind of like had to teach me a little bit. It was like, I was not very good at style, at like how I dress. Like I've never been good at that, to be totally honest. I've had to have people help me throughout the years. And I had a good friend in the band who was like, okay, Devon, I'm gonna like help you like own your rock star a little bit more. And like he would take me shopping. He was like, you need to get a really good expensive leather jacket. And then and then I did that. And he's like, hey, you need really good boots now, because like you are representative of her. So when you're out there in the world walking around, like you got to look cool and you got to look like you take this seriously. And like I had never had anybody tell me this before. I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, whatever. I'm just like, this is me. But after he showed me that, and honestly, after I felt what it felt like to dress better and to find my own style, I was like, oh, this is so much better, actually. I like feel so much better in my own skin.
Yeah. And do you ever bump into any famous people in LA?
In LA? Yeah, good. No, not really. But I haven't been in LA for a year. So
yeah, that's so true.
When I was in LA though, yeah, not really, unless we're at a rehearsal place where of course they would be, you know.
Yeah, because everyone thinks from the outside world that LA is like really small, and it's like I went there, it's like absolutely massive.
God, it's massive. Yeah, it's so wild.
But I think Nashville is like that. Nashville is really small.
A great point. I could see it happening out there way more. Yeah.
Yeah, and literally Nashville, like I absolutely love country music. And when I went, me and my brother actually, my mum took us to, because we're like I love Jack Daniels. And so one of my like bucket list things was to go to where they make it in Lynchburg.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
And so we actually went there. And it's like, we went I was auditioning for cruises at the time, and we went in every bar, and every single bar, the musicians were like elite level players. I just couldn't like believe it.
They're incredible out there. It's so amazing. Yeah.
Would you love to go out there?
Wait, say that again?
Would you love to go out there?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Nashville a lot, to be honest. I was in a pop country band for quite a long time, and And so we'd go out there all the time and do writing sessions and whatnot. And I really like Nashville. There's a beauty in it. I like LA better, if I'm going to be honest. Just food wise and culture wise, scenery wise, like all the things. But I definitely think in my head, like maybe I should move to Nashville, like kind of out of practical reasons, like so much easier to afford a house out there. Like there's just a lot of good practical reasons. Also, like there's lovely people. I have good friends out there. So Nashville is awesome. I do feel like in LA musically, it's like it's a little bit easier, I think, to be whoever you want to be, or to be like your own unique self. I almost feel like in Nashville, it's like you said, like, oh, there's all these elite pro musicians in every bar, and they probably, yeah, they're all insane, right? But in LA, you might have maybe not as elite musicians in every place, but there probably is a lot of more unique versatility in the different styles of playing you see. And I think that's really cool. Like I have a lot of different musician friends in LA that all have a different sound. And it's like, it's not like the exact style of playing. It's not this exact Nashville, like shred them up. Like it's like very much them. And like, that is what inspires me. It's like such a unique voice that'll capture you and like take you to a new place, you know?
Yeah.
And like actually in regards, sorry, can I scroll back?
No, of course.
I was remembering something when you asked me about comparing yourself to other people and how to not like go down that rabbit hole. And I had this moment in a rehearsal with Katy Perry where we were preparing for a show. I think it was a really cool show we were playing in India. And we were in rehearsals and they made this really badass intro to this whole show. And they wanted me to take a solo over it. And I was like, okay, cool. And I don't know why I had it in my head that I was like supposed to like go like shred, like 80s, like let's shred it up, right? And like that's honestly not what I do. Like that's not ever really who I am. Like yes, play solos, play lead, but I'm more melodic based and more feel and melodic based. That's kind of more my thing. But I don't know, I had it in my head. I was like, okay, I just have to be as flashy and showy as possible. Because maybe it was because I was on Instagram looking at people that were like that. And I was like, okay, this must be what you do on this kind of thing, right? So I had come up with a solo that was totally out of my wheelhouse, but like it kind of pushed me to grow. I was like, oh, cool. I'm doing like these like 80s like shred licks. Like this is super fast and fun. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is what she's gonna want, right? And so then she comes in to listen to it and in rehearsal, and then after I played, I was like, yeah, I nailed that. That was sick. And then she's like, Devon, that was really, really great. But like, can you just like play less notes? Can you just like slow it down and maybe be more melodic? And I was like, oh my God. That's exactly what I would have done had I not got in my head about it. You know, that's exactly who I am. Obviously, you hired me for what I do. And it just completely reminded me that you need to value who you are and what you do. And like you are in the place that you are because of that. And that you don't need to try to be somebody else. Because the reality is they might not like that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, I think the last one I did was with Justin Timberlake's bassist, and he was saying the same. They would audition people, and people would come in and they would just shed, because that's what like the world deems as like cool or like whatever, linear, all this linear stuff. And then the people that ironically would play just whatever was on the track. He was like, you would not believe the level of players that would be coming in and just like shedding all over the tracks. And he'd be like, we would like, people are just looking for like just what is on the play, what is on the track. And like I said, because of this like Instagram, TikTok world, you've only got 30 seconds. So you feel like you need to prove
exactly
you can play like all the notes in that 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You know?
But music isn't about all the notes. It's not. It's about what are you saying with those notes? It's about melody. It's about like, what do I want to listen to? And I've learned with Katy, like she appreciates melody. She doesn't want flashy guitar solo-y randomness, you know? She wants something that's going to say something. And like, that's what I like
that
too.
Intent, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's what probably gets musicians at your level, probably where they are, is that musical integrity to just play what is asked of them, you know, like, because they leave their ego behind. They don't feel like they need to prove anything more because they're already on the gig.
Yes,
you know?
totally.
And so did you play the Glastonbury gig in 2017?
Yes.
How
Oh
was
my
that?
God. That was insane. That was before the tour. So that was when we were in quote unquote promo period, right? And that was probably like one of my first gigs with her, maybe my third gig with her. And it was just so wild. I can't even remember if I'd played like a big festival like that before.
Did you know
Um,
how big a deal it is over here?
Oh, I had definitely heard. And
Oh,
like
okay.
I'm a big fan of like Katy Tunstall is like one of my favorite artists, and she's from Scotland. So like I feel like I've done like research in that area. And I in my head, even though I didn't know too much about it, in my head, Glastonbury was always like the pinnacle of all festivals.
Yeah.
So when I heard that I was playing Glastonbury, I was like, no way.
My
And
friend
then
actually plays for Katy Tunstall guitar.
no way.
Yeah, she would love to hook up with you.
Oh God. Wait, who's your friend?
Her name's Hattie Moran.
Oh my God, I'm friends with her on Instagram. She's
Yeah,
so cool.
she's
I mean, I
amazing.
love how she plays. I love her
She's great.
vibe.
And
I
we've been,
want to meet her one day.
yeah, I'm sure you will. We actually, it's so random. We did a college audition together.
Oh my God.
And like it was like quite awkward as far as I can remember. And then we've just stayed in touch all these years. So that's so random.
Wow. That is so random. Oh my
Isn't the
God.
universe so small?
It's crazy. Dang.
But I was always wondering like how big a deal it was over there to you
It's a big
guys.
deal.
Okay.
All of us in the band were like, we're playing Glastonbury right now. And then like even playing it in the moment of playing it, man, the feels were insane. Like
Yeah.
that is such a vibe out there.
Yeah.
It's so much better than like I think about the nearest festival to me is Coachella. And I've never been to Coachella, but man, I don't think I ever want to. Like it being out in the heat like that. And yeah, I don't know. The weather was so much better. I mean, it was like muddy and like wet, but it was so cool. I just felt like people were more friendly and I also felt like it wasn't like dominated by really young people. It
Oh
felt like it was
yeah.
a wide range of people, which I
Yeah.
love.
And it's like families and like
Exactly.
it's like a 5-day event.
Oh, so
I
cool.
know it's so
Oh,
weird. And
do you
so
go? Have you played Glastonbury / you
oh,
go?
I wish that's like high on my list is to play
Cool.
Glastonbury Pyramid stage.
Oh,
But I love hearing stories from like what it's like to actually do it.
love that. Yes.
Like Lana Del Rey's drummer Tom was saying, like he had been to Glastonbury like every year when he was younger because it's
Mm.
every 2 years. It's because the farm needs time to like grow back. So
Okay,
so they do it in
gotcha.
2 year stints, and so
Oh, I didn't know that.
he was like dreaming of it and idolizing it. And then he said their bus pulled up into like the back behind the pyramid stage, and then he
Uh-huh.
said he got off the bus, and Robert Plant was the first person he saw off the bus.
Oh my
Isn't
gosh.
that like wild?
That's wild.
It's like
Gee.
you must like just pinch yourself and be like, not only are you about to play Glastonbury,
Really.
but you're also like just in amongst all these like rock legends.
Exactly. Wow. That's
And so
insane.
was it as good as you thought it was going to be?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I loved it. I mean, the performing part, I was just I love festivals in general. Festivals just give you an energy that arenas don't, even though I love arenas, but festivals are way more energy. And that crowd was incredible. Like it was so much fun.
Yeah. Would you love to do it again?
Absolutely. Oh,
And
yes.
are there ones that you have also like on your list of ones you'd love to do?
Hmm.
Have you done the Greek?
I've never heard of the Greek. Oh,
The
you
Greek?
mean do you mean the Greek theater?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, no, I've never played that. That would be amazing. That and the
Yeah.
Hollywood Bowl I want to play.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where did John Mayer do Where the Light Is? Was that the Greek?
Ooh, I don't know. It sounds like that would probably be where he did it, but I couldn't tell you for
I think
sure.
he did a whole live album there. I just can't remember where it was. I think it was
Ooh, that's so
yeah. And
cool.
I've heard Red Rock, wherever that is really cool.
That I want to do too. Okay, yeah. So festivals, there's no other festivals I can like say I want to do that. I probably would have said Glastonbury had you asked me before I'd done that. But yeah, Red Rocks, yes, and Hollywood Bowl, I feel like are two that I really want to do.
Yeah, and other artists.
Another artist I want to play for?
Yeah.
That's such a good question. I oof. I I'm not totally sure. I'm trying to think right now. I love anything like in the style of like pop rock that's like just really good. Like I love like, Maggie Rogers kind of music, Leon. Um, yeah, I'm not sure, to be totally honest. I feel like I've never really known in my head like what artist I want to play for. Like I never would have been like, I'm gonna play for Katy Perry before I did that. I didn't really know I wanted that gig until I got it. And then when I got it, it was like, oh yeah, this is who I want to play for sure, you
Yeah.
know? So I'm
Yeah.
kind of just like open to whatever is supposed to happen.
Yeah. Well, the universe will do it for you anyway. So
There you go. There
it's
you go.
it's pointless really trying to plan it out.
Yeah, exactly.
And
There
so
you go.
speaking in terms of like technicality, what are some of the technical things? I'm guessing you've probably had a year to practice now, like everyone else.
Yeah.
What are the kind of practical things that you work on, and what would you advise people to work on?
Yeah. So I think this year has been good in regards to getting back to some basics for me. I think when you get into, just working and gigging and whatnot, you stop practicing some of the basics like scales and just simple things that like are actually really good to go over. So I just honestly I like, run scales in the day in the morning. And like intervals. Like I I had this thing where I was like, you know what? I really want to know where every interval is on my guitar. Like I want to know every seventh, like where, like, okay, where's every G7 interval? And like that's something I never did that in school. Like that wasn't something like we had to do. Um, and so like picking like random things that I feel like help like my understanding of just the fretboard, so I can kind of get there quicker if somebody tells me like play this, has been something good to work on. So that's fun. And also just I've been thinking about like timing even more recently, like being in Logic and like being more aware of my timing if I'm playing along to something. Um, just like I think it's honestly just comes down to like focusing on it more. It's like, okay, if I'm rushing right now, like just focus and
Yeah.
like let's try to get this more in beat. I've also been working on slide, which is something I'm not great at. I've always kind of struggled with intonation on slide. So I've just been practicing slide, literally trying to get like my pitch as perfect as possible when I'm playing. So like literal like nuances I feel like I've been trying to practice more than like let me like learn this lick. I've been trying to get more into like let me dive into basics a little more.
Yeah. And so, when you'll have the stems for the tracks and things like that, obviously
Yeah.
you wouldn't have played on the studio track. It might have been like 12 different players on that
Yes.
you have to emulate. So how do you try and, because like they'll have their own style and they'll have
Yeah.
their own way of playing.
Yeah.
And so how do you just try and just do your best to get their tone and phrasing and things like that?
Totally. I definitely try to do my best to get as close as possible because that's kind of the job I would say for that gig. Um, but a lot of I feel like the parts we're playing, there's not a whole lot of guitar on some of these newer pop songs. There is guitar, but not on everything. So sometimes we're recreating like sounds or keyboard parts even. So I feel like in those moments you're like, okay, well, like I really got to get just as close as possible, but like with the full knowing that you can't make a keyboard sound on guitar quite
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you also teach at this like Grammy teaching thing. Is that right?
Oh, I guess I wouldn't say I teach, but I did go to this thing called Grammy Camp when I was in high school. And it was an amazing music camp where they put kids together who are musicians and you learn all about what it's like to be in the music industry. You get put in bands.
Oh,
It's
that's
it's
so
really, really
sweet.
cool. So they asked me back during this year to do a panel for
Oh,
I
nice.
was like it was like the week prior to Grant it was I think it was Grammy week, I guess. And they asked me to do a panel where basically we're kind of similar to this where they ask you questions about what it's like to be in music.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Yeah.
I'm very honored that I'm up there with the Grammy people.
Yes, of course you are.
And so you've stayed like you've worked and then you've just continued to work and you will continue to work. What would you say are some of the keys to just being able to stay? Like there's one thing getting the job, and then there's another
Yeah.
being like keeping the job.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think if you get the job, it's probably because you can clearly do the job musically, and they want who you are as a person, as a musician, like they like your particular style. So I think that's like not necessarily something you need to worry about in regards to keeping the job, but I think it just comes down to like, okay, how do you act now? How fun are you to hang around? Like
Yeah.
that ends up being like a really big deal. I think that we don't think about until we're in a touring situation, but it's so like half the game, if not more than half the game. You're
Yeah.
like, because you're on a bus with these people, so it's like you just have to be a good hang, and like that's honestly not hard for most people. Like I can already tell like you'd be such a fun hang on the bus. Like you have no problem, right?
After my contract, it's going to be like sometime next year. I really want to go to California. If you are there,
Yes,
we will hang out.
let's hang out. Come on, hit me up. Let's do it.
Yeah, and so it's so funny, isn't it? Because I think people spend, and young musicians especially, spend so long practicing and practicing and practicing, and that's one thing that maybe is
Mhm.
neglected. You know, they just don't go out and they don't socialize, or
Yeah.
like, or the amount of people, musicians like yourself that I've spoken to, who are like, they will take someone who is really fun to be around, who can get through the music, but they're just really great to be around, than someone who is just shit hot, but is just intolerable.
Total. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, would you? It's like ask yourself that question. Do you want to tour with somebody who's intolerable? No, don't.
Yeah.
I
So
want
that's,
that energy around
yeah. So
me.
that's the thing that I don't think is being said enough to like younger
Yeah.
up and coming musicians, is like,
So
you
true.
also need to like, yeah, practice and practice and practice, but also like, don't neglect your social life. Like that's because
Totally.
that's where you build those skills,
Yes, I love that.
you
So
know?
true. Yeah, it's all
And
part of it.
so that's what you would say is just go out and also just like speak to people. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you necessarily like need to like be super social on tour to keep the tour. You know what I mean? But I all I mean by that is just be a good person. Like, be super easy to get along with. Like don't 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 get mad at things if they ask you to do things. Like we've been asked to be in like silly costumes before. It's like, okay, it's your time to be a nutcracker now, and I, you know, you could either get mad at that and be like, really, I have to put on a nutcracker outfit, or you could be like, this is so fun, let's just do it. You know, it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
respect.
yeah.
Have a healthy attitude towards things, because just I think negative energy in general, like people can feel it. Like if you're mad where you are or you don't want to be there, like the artist might pick up on that. So I just think it's really good. Just be positive and just enjoy it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. My brother read a book once called The Energy Bus, and it was
Mm.
basically using like your energy as like a bus. And it's like you can let people
Oh,
on and let people off. And there are like drains and radiators, right? So there are people who
yeah.
give off and then you get it off each other. And then there are people that only just take, and like energy is such a big thing, like emotional
Oh,
energy. When you
oh,
speak to someone and it's like they're really negative and blah, 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 you
yeah.
can like feel that, right? You feel like
Oh, for
exhausted.
sure. You feel like it affects you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. So on
I
tour,
feel
you
like,
just need to bring,
yes. But
bring
it's
that.
also like making sure you're where you want to be too, because I've done gigs, and they were like smaller gigs with friends and whatnot, but I've done particular gigs where my energy wasn't good. Like either I was in a dark mental state or I just didn't want to be there, and I like when I think back on that, I was like, I must have really affected how they felt. And like that probably wasn't fun for them to be around me, So taking
Yeah.
ownership of those moments, but also like letting sometimes your energy speak to you. Like maybe it's telling you that you don't want to be there. Maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
that's
also,
not the gig
yeah.
you want to be on.
But I think because of like you were saying, like meditation, and like I can already tell you're so introspective that
Mhm.
you can probably monitor and check yourself anyway, which is well, like
That's
I
true.
find meditation really helps that, and being self-aware enough to be like, oh, I didn't really handle that the best. Like
Mhm.
and like having those sorts of conversations, I think meditation and things like that probably really help you with that, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And prayer. I'm like all about prayer these days too. I'm just like, oh, sometimes it's like I love meditation because it like takes you out of like your mind and it helps you reorient into like your spirit and your body and whatnot. But like prayer to me helps me like just get my mind in the right space. If it's in a bad space, it's like, okay, let me move it to where it should be.
Yeah. And so do you meditate every day?
No, I'm not great at being like totally what am I trying to say? I'm not great at being like doing it all the time. But
Yeah.
I find that I definitely want to be better at it. But I definitely use it if I can tell I'm in a bad space. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go meditate right now. And it helps.
Yeah. Almost like
It's
instantly,
almost like
right?
medicine, you know what I mean? It's like medicine sometimes. I
Yeah.
should take that daily dose of medicine, but
Yeah.
But right now, sometimes it's just, here's your medicine when you need it.
Right. Exactly. You
Yeah.
don't go to the doctor unless you're unwell, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So one last one. This has been so
Yeah.
much fun. So thank you.
Oh man.
What is your final piece of advice for anyone who wants to do what you're doing?
Oof, I love this question. I think that my final piece of advice would be get in a community of like-minded musicians and creatives that are going to help inspire you and who are going to believe in you, and you're going to play together and help lift each other up musically to become what you're meant to be. I think that's super powerful, and I think I learned that going to college for music, because it was like you were forced into this community of musicians, all different kinds. You got writers, drummers, all these different people. And what was so beautiful about that community was just everyone was so welcoming, so supportive, and we all just like offered up complete love towards each other. And it was always trying to look at the best in each other, and try to help those parts grow, right? And I think if you're in that kind of community, it's so much easier to continue believing in yourself and continue on the path of becoming a musician, which can be, a wild road. It's like you don't have a specific path to follow. It's super random. So I think when you're in that community, it's like you have these people to lean on, and you have these people that believe in you, continue to see you, then you continue to see yourself. And I just think that's so powerful.
I absolutely love that. Plus, also by you inadvertently being a really great person and really nice to be around, even in your college days, like you got the gig, you got the audition, like shout out or heads up for the Katy Perry gig from someone you knew in college.
I know, wild, right?
But yeah, which is a testament to you that someone remembered you and kind of followed your journey. And so, it's almost like being just like nice to be around and being nice to people.
Yeah.
Like inadvertently got you that job, right?
That's so true. Oh my gosh. And it was because he had seen me play with a friend of mine who I had played with in college. And like that goes back to the community. It was like, okay, I found this awesome friend who I loved her songwriting, and I joined her band. And I got to be myself as a guitar player by playing her music. I felt authentically in my being, and I got to help her out while she helped me out, because I was realizing who I was as a guitar player and she was realizing herself as a songwriter. And he saw me play for her. So it was like, that goes back to that community. I was integrated into this community, and I was out there doing things because I was in this community. And then that's how I got the gig, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. Also being a killer player obviously helps. Like, obviously, everything we've just said, don't neglect the playing side either.
No, of course.
Like but then again, when you're being asked to go into those auditions, you're there because you can play. So a lot of it is probably just trying to suss you out as a person, and
totally. Yes, exactly.
But yeah, thank you so much. It's been so great. I've absolutely loved it.